My name is Andreas Angelidakis. I am an architect and artist. I have a multifaceted practice that includes also curating, doing architecture for art exhibitions and public programs. And in general, it's a research-based practice. I've worked a lot on urban regeneration, mostly in Nordic countries, in Sweden, and how to create new places to live, but filled also with life. So not just infrastructure and housing, but also how to make that housing into a city, which is a vibrant environment. So this idea of chaos democracy, it's very simple. It's normally in art exhibitions, we are invited to just look at things. And so I wanted to instead to do this open call that invites people who might be outside of the system of art to participate with their work, but also to bring it in the space, to install it with us. For example, one of the artists today asked me, where should I put my piece? And I said, wherever you want. So this is a way for them to be engaged with the process of the exhibition. It's democratic, but can also be chaotic. So the idea of chaos democracy is that you invite people into the city of exhibiting, but they participate actively. And they can make mistakes, they can make something that brings them into discussion with somebody else. So it's not the typical way of installing an exhibition, you know, behind closed doors and then you present it. But rather, everybody's involved. People can make mistakes, can try out things. So that is kind of chaos democracy. Everybody has rights, and you don't know exactly the result. It's a bit like gardening. You plant the seeds, and then you wait for to see what the result is. So that would be chaos democracy. I would say that the most important element of a regeneration process is the people that will inhabit temporarily for 1 hour, or they will live there. They are what will turn the regeneration projects into an actual place. So the idea with this project was to make something that is, let's say, based on user participation, not just an exhibition of bridges, because the project is called Ponte, but the idea is that the project itself, this open call of artists bringing their work, is a kind of bridge for regeneration, to connect a building with the people. For me, Florence is always the city of radical architecture, because so many of these groups, like Superstudio, Gruppo UFO, were based here. And this movement of radical architecture, which was the early sign of postmodernism, was born here. It is interesting because it was one of perhaps the only moment in time of architecture that was able to be critical. This was the spirit of that time, from May '68. It was a time of humans realizing that their future was not as expected, and so they were criticizing it. And so radical architecture had the power to be cynical, to criticize, to be antithetical, or to propose alternatives. That's important because architecture as a practice is most of the time just providing hardware for living. And of course, it's a business tool. But the possibility of radical architecture introduces the idea that you can be critical about it. And that's important because we are all trying to make the world a better place. And so without being critical, you cannot do that. Yes, and also Ponte Vecchio is a sort of a critical or radical structure because it introduced a kind of society onto this bridge. So if you look at it metaphorically, a bridge is something that connects one side to the other, or a way to cross a border. And when you invite people to also inhabit that bridge and give it functions, it becomes a kind of superstructure, a super building. So yes, the idea for this project came from these sources. More modest, of course, because it's a 3-day festival, but also, I mean, I'm very happy with the response. We have around 170 works in the exhibition, which is great.
Super. Last question.
Also, wait, I want to add something else. Also, the way that I see how the development is taking place here at Manifattura Tabacchi, that is also a sort of radical way of doing development. Because you start growing a place organically, rather than finishing a part of the city that's brand new and then just opening the door and people inhabit. So what you're doing here is a kind of, in my eyes, simulating a natural process, which would be available space and then people slowly move in. But of course, it's choreographed with all the events that you produce, the functions, the schools. So it's a radical and, in my eyes, the only way to do development. So it's a kind of radical prototype, let's say. I mean, for me, contemporary art and culture in general, it is important for development purposes, and it goes well. It's a kind of marriage, because it carries with it a sort of ecosystem of people who make the place alive. An idea would be, as you said, to continue with the idea of schools and merge it with contemporary art. A process of experimentation, of both education and learning. So I think it's important always when we are in an educational environment or an art environment to not be the ones necessarily broadcasting, but also receiving. So a program like this could be a testing session for ideas. The contemporary art could be the seed or the question, and then the audience could provide the answer, which would be the opposite of what is usually done. Like artists are supposed to provide the answer, but it's interesting to also ask the question. Yes.
Super, super. Grazie Andreas.
Thank you.